G'day guys, it's the coach here, and in this video I'm going to do a tournament recap for Vic GT. It was based down in Melbourne, Bendigo, which is regional Victoria. It had 70 players. It was our first real large event since COVID kind of happened. We've had some small one-day events. We have had a 40-player event I got to attend in November, but this probably was the largest event I was going to, so I was going to be extremely curious now that there was enough time to see how Gargants are hitting the table, how Lumineth have now probably gotten onto the table. Now we're getting an opportunity to see Seraphon post FAQ. I was really curious to see what the meta was going to look like in the Measured Gaming crew, who are were the host of the event, who are a very traditional competitive scene. So I knew whoever was going to attend was going to be some quite hard matchups, but it was going to be a lot of fun as well. I know the guys like to play hard, but also they love to have a great time. So what was I going to run at the tournament? I decided I was going to take my Gargants. I was going to take the Sons of Behemat. I love the army. I've gotten to practice with them a little bit. I took them to that 40-player tournament, and I took the Taker tribe in the past. It was good, but I was really getting frustrated with the lack of consistency to hit. Gargants have a lot, in most Gargants, they have a lot of high damage hits, but they don't have a lot of high volume. So if you happen to fail those hits, or if you happen to get debuffs with you, a -1 to hit or some type of debuff, it was going to be really challenging for me. So I swapped from the Taker tribe to go to the Breaker tribe, looking for more consistency through the shiny. So basically everyone in my army except for my Kraken Eater, because my Kraken Eater doesn't have the appropriate keywords, would get +1 to hit for attacks when they target a unit with a save characteristic of 1, 2, 3, or 4, although that didn't benefit them if they were to attack a hero or a monster. So it would bring up the rock throws, it would bring up their hits to usually around a 2+ or a 3+, which I knew was going to help me in the long run. I then decided with my general, had to be a gatebreaker. The gatebreaker in the Breaker tribe must be the general. I took myself the extremely bitter command trait, which allowed me to also then have bossy pants. So what that allowed me to do is my general would also get +1 to hit for attacks that targeted a hero or a wizard, in conjunction with the +1 hit against units of 1, 2, 3, or 4 armor save that weren't a hero or weren't a monster. So really overall getting some solid consistency across the army. I was also getting myself a 6+ after save or ward save, a feel no pain, a damage prevention roll through the artifact. So again, keeping my general on the table for a little bit longer. In addition, I took another 2 Mega Gargants, so I would only have 6 models on the table with this army. I had another Gatebreaker that would get the advantages of the Allegiance ability, and I also took the Kraken Eater. The Kraken Eater it brings a few different things to the table. The Gatebreakers are real damage dealers. Your Kraken Eater is a bit more of a utility piece, so that's the one that kicks the objective, so that would be good in certain scenarios to either reduce the risk of an opponent stealing my objective, or in some particular scenarios, I'd be able to change the points value of the objective by kicking it out of one territory into another territory, should the dice rolls be high enough. Also, the Kraken Eater does have the ability to stuff people in its bag when it piles in, which is really helpful that the Gatebreaker doesn't have. And it also has more rock throwing attacks. So while the Gatebreaker does do some big damage with its once per shooting phase attack, the Kraken Eater does have a few more rock throws. So overall, it did bring a utility to the table. And then finally, I had 1 unit of Man Crushers. That's 3. So when you take a unit of 3 Man Crushers, it fulfills all 3 battle line requirements, which is really handy. So that means that I went to be a 4-drop as opposed to what I was running in the past, which was a 6-drop. Now, 4-drop 1 gave me a really good opportunity to win on the table and determine who goes first. But I also, you might notice that I didn't take a command point. Despite me being command point poor, despite me being 1950, I elected to go for the Triumph instead of the command point. And the reason for it is that the triumph, whether it's going to be reroll hits, reroll wounds, or reroll saves, would be far more valuable for the consistency of a Gargant, especially things like reroll saves, which I'll talk about later. There was a couple of times this became really important. That triumph was worth more value to me than the command point. So overall, I was coming in at 1950, and I was also going to have 140 wounds, which was going to be really tough to shrug off any of the objectives. So the first round matchup, I got to play Adam Huey. Adam Huey was running Nighthaunt, and we were playing shifting objectives, and you can see his army list on the screen here. What you're seeing here, guys, is he had 160 Chainrasp Horde in addition to all the other things in his army. Now, that's going to be a challenge for my army first off. I looked at this, and I cried a little bit inside because what ends up happening is his Chainrasp have a 5-up armor save, so that mitigates my +1 to hit. All his army ignores Rend, so again, a lot of my high damage, low volume attacks all are based on Rend 2 and Rend 3, so that was going to be a real challenge for me. And the fact that he had the Horde to swarm across the board and come back was going to be quite challenging. It wasn't unwinnable. It certainly could be winnable, but I'd have to play really well. So we both had 4 drops to determine who goes first. He really wanted to drop a whole bunch of things into the underworld. I wanted to sit on the objective and push him away 9 inches from the underworld rule. So when we went for the roll-off, I actually won the roll-off. So I decided that I would take first turn and I would go onto the objective and then try to sit on it. The problem is that I'm an idiot. And when I moved my Gargants on top of the objective to try to deny as many of those spooky ghosts from getting onto that 6-inch objective radius, what I did, and I realized this the minute I ended my turn, was I sat on the objective, but I only tagged it. With the Suns, I can tag objectives, and I could run, I could run and sit on the objective, but I decided to tag it and try to go for some shooting attacks and try to take down some things like the Dreadblade Harrow or some type of those support units that would be chip damage, really. But when I ended my turn, I realized that I had enough space on the table, and Adam had deployed enough of those Chainrasps on the table that he could charge onto the objective and he would still steal it off me, despite my Mega Gargants counting as 20. So it was a grave mistake, and Adam impressively runs some pretty good rolls. He runs some great run rolls of 6s. He hit some really good charges, but ultimately he made me pay for a mistake that I made at the start, and it was going to be a fight back. So come turn 2, we rolled priority. Adam won the priority, so he continued to press forward, started scoring more points. We got into combat. I would start to lose those objectives, especially the center objectives. We would start getting in combat. I would be swinging. I would be trying to hit, but in the end of my turn 2, I was able to destroy the center objective Chainrasp. So there was a 40 Chainrasp and a supporting hero there. And then what I ended up doing was, come turn 3, I got the priority, so I swung my Gatebreakers to the side to start going in and supporting the other Gatebreaker to the left. I was then trying to, basically with Nighthaunt, is that you can't do chip damage. You've got to obliterate the unit. You've almost got to overcommit to a unit like this, because if you leave a couple of models on the table, those heroes, and even this is just true for death, anything that has a regeneration ability, Pink Horrors is another example, you leave 1 or 2 Pink Horrors on the table and it's very easy to start bringing them back. So knowing that I had to kill those 40 Chainrasp, I just put concentrated fire. So charging in, throwing rocks, swinging, mortal wounds on the charges, hitting some reroll ones to hit with some command abilities. By the end of turn 2, I had destroyed half of his army, but the challenge was that there was still 92 wounds sitting on the right flank, and Adam had built a strong defensive castle, and by winning the priority in turn 2 and scoring big on turn 1, and by the way, in this objective he also scores extra points when a battle line holds the objective. what ended up happening is that the lead started to creep up, and by turn 4 I won the priority. I ran into him, and we started to have a go at that right flank. He had that castle with the Dreadblade Harrow in the middle. He had the ability to teleport, so I couldn't overcommit. If I started overcommitting and putting everything into that unit, he had the ability to pull out some of his unit with the Dreadblade Harrow and teleport, and then just re-steal my left or center objective that I let go. So there was a bit of a balancing act here, and then kind of come turn 5, Adam played really cagey, and ironically enough, not one single Gargan of mine, not even a Man Crusher, ended up falling over. So nothing of mine died. Adam eventually won. The battle line additional victory points did help. However, Adam played a great game, and he still only had 2 Chainghast, a Dreadblade Harrow, and a Spirit of Torment. So I had more models, but ultimately I lost the match. So the Nighthawk got the major victory on this one. So that's my observations. Now I want to show you what Adam had to say. All right, we started again because there's these hot garbage players throwing shade, trying to get us demonetized, but it's a Magic Gaming crew, you know where they're at. But I am with my first round opponent here. It is Adam Huey. He was running the most broken, filthy, he was running Nighthaunt, 160 chain rust.
Yep. Made good use of the Mortal Realms magazines, basically 16 copies of issue 1 and 3 copies of issue 2, plus a few heroes.
Mate, you're making people jealous overseas who can't get that cheap Mortal Realms magazine. But what was your thoughts of the game? How did it go? What were some of the critical moments for you? Like, what was your observation?
It was a good game. It was hard for you because basically I ignored all your rend, had death saves, all that. It was good fun. It was actually my first time against Sons of Behemat. It played exactly how my army plays. I run forwards, try to get on an objective, and then just hold. Failed to kill a single model of yours.
Not one Gargant went down, not even a single Man Crusher.
Yeah, so started the game with 176 models versus 6, finished it with 4 versus 6.
So I had more models at the end.
But yeah, that's how my army plays. It was a lot of fun. You started to scare me in the middle there, started to come back, but I held on. And it showed what Nighthawk can do. Yeah, there's a lot of bodies. You ignored rend, you had a really good armor set. Oh, not really good, but you had enough bodies. You had the regeneration ability, being able to block your heroes behind big walls of bodies. You got the movement, you got the underworld stuff. You played the game really well. Shifting objectives rewarded you for your battle line. I've only technically got 1 unit, which is battle line, because I've got my 3 units, my unit of 3. But you played the game really well. You were smart to retreat. There were times where combat just wasn't going in your favor, and you retreated to get more bodies onto an objective. I think it was an interesting game for me. I think, and we talked about it right at the start, I made a big mistake with my first turn movement, not using the big base size, and you took advantage of that, and it became a tough hill battle up. Yes. It would have been interesting going the other way, where if you had zoned me out, I would have had to charge, maybe get that 10 double pile-ins. It would have turned it completely around from you being the attacking player, me being defensive, to me being the attacking player.
It would be interesting to see how much damage you could put in, because you've got a lot of attacks, and that's the type of thing that'll take the Gargants down. It was the Chain Rasp with their double attacks, getting a lot of the rerolls from the support characters.
Yes, I did a decent amount of damage. It was just all spread out.
It was all chip damage.
If I was going in getting 80 attacks on one Gargan, it would have been a different story.
Well, Adam, all the best. Thank you for this. We'll interview everyone else after my little wrap up of the round. But Adam, best of luck. Let's see Nighthawk go 5-0.
Thank you.
So next up, I got to fight Bradley Barrett. Brad was running Seraphon, Coattail's Claw in the battle plan of Forcing the Hand. So I wasn't really sure how this was going to unfold. Brad's list wasn't the crazy Seraphon list that people are talking about. It still had it still had the Croak and friends. It still had the Ashlith Bearer. It still had that core body of Lord Croak and his friends. But it wasn't going to spam the Salamanders. It wasn't spamming Skinks. It wasn't doing the Mortal Wounds on the Retreat. It was a wonderful combination, in my opinion, of what a Seraphon army could look like and should look like. It had a bit of a mixture of your Carnosaurs, your Saurus Warriors, but then also the spell dominance. So it was like a middle competitive, in my opinion. So it was awesome to kind of play both this combination of Coalesced and Starborn. So I outdropped Brad. I got to take first turn and I decided to give it away. I knew that he didn't have the speed to get to me first. I knew that Lord Croak wouldn't have much damage output in first turn, being this far away. So what he decided to do is he tried to generate some command points and really just created this defensive castle, and shuffled around some Saurus Warriors, but ultimately I think he was bracing for the charge and was hoping that he would be able to, if my Gargants start coming close. I probably couldn't hit the charge in turn 1. But if he could win priority turn 2, he'd then be in range for a lot of spell power, throw down some of those extra command points he had up his sleeve. I think he was, so either way, it was going to be potentially turn 2 was going to see what happened. And luckily for me, I won priority 2, which meant that I could bum rush him and charge my Mega Gargants and my Man Crushers into that castle. Again, knowing that he had the CPs to be able to, and by the way, the coattails for one of the benefits that he was bringing to his army was he was going to ignore Rend 1. Reduce the damage by 1. So again, these high volume attacks, instead of doing, and there's a lot of D6s and D3s in my army, so he was going to be able to reduce the amount of damage from the impacts, which is going to be really interesting, again, as I mentioned. So I knew that I had to go in knowing that my attacks were going to do a little bit less damage. I had to charge in, and I threw majority of my force into that big block of 40 Saurus Warriors that were, and there's also another unit of 10 Saurus Warriors and 3 Aetherwings that were protecting the Ashlith Bearer, Lord Croak, and the Skink Starseer. I knew if I could get into that juicy center, I'd be able to collapse it, and I would then be able to kind of stop what he could do, or at least force his hand. And that's exactly what happened. I was able to destroy 50 Saurus Warriors in the round of combat. I threw 1,500 points at him, so I did kill 50 Saurus Warriors, and Brad then, in his response, had to retreat his Croak and friends away from my army, especially if I was to win the priority roll. I would then just continue to onslaught, and those guys don't want to be in combat. So, the big block of troops were gone. He still had a block of 40 on the other flank with a Carnosaur. So he was retreating his troops back towards the Carnosaur while his 40 Saurus Warriors and Carnosaur advanced up the board. Come turn 3, I won the priority roll and continued to charge into Croak and his friends. But instead of going for those heroes, I went for this 40 Saurus Warriors and the everything else that was around. There's a couple of Saurus Guard. There was the Carnosaur I mentioned, and the reason for it is I wanted to remove those threats against stealing my objective. As much as I wanted to kill Croak as quick as possible, I wanted to remove any threats to be able to get my objective. A prime example is when I attacked in turn 1 or turn 2. I think I threw some rocks at the Aetherwings and I killed 2 Aetherwings, and there was 1 Aetherwing left. And it would have been easy just to let 1 Aetherwing go, but it was that speed of the Aetherwing that could have flew and retreated or flew around my Mega Gargants, stole an objective while everything else kind of forced at my troops. So again, I had to just keep committing and keep reducing the threats to the objective. So I charge into those 40 Saurus Warriors and the 5 Saurus Guard. I was able to basically kill all of his troops, and that meant he only had 5 heroes on the table, and we were playing Hero Hammer. The Carnosaurs went in and in conjunction with Lord Croak, with Comet's Call and some of the mortal wound damage, pulled down the 3 Man Crushers. And if I remember correctly, one of the Man Crushers was actually close to Lord Croak and actually toppled over and did some mortal wounds. I think it might have killed the Fat Lizard, or it might not have. But either way, there was some real damage. I had a significant lead, and coming into turn 4, I won the priority roll for turn 4. And by then the lead was just too great, and without really any troops to score, the game was kind of called. We kind of just played it through, but the game was well and truly over. So really tough matchup. I think Brad was surprised on how fast. And look, I hit some big charges. I hit some 11-inch charges and some 10-inch charges, but being able to throw my force so quickly up the board, I think caught Brad a little bit off guard. But let's hear what Brad had to say. All right, guys, we are finishing round 2. We just played Forcing the Hand.
Yes.
And I'm with Brad.
Hey.
Brad from Terrainheim, how are you? How did it go for you?
Ooh, I got a good lesson in what Gargants can do. Like, I had an idea what they could do, but seeing videos and then seeing actually on the table rushing you, oh, ow, yeah.
What surprised you? Because we had an interesting game, and obviously you've just heard my summary, but Brad, like, what were you expecting? What happened? What did you learn for next time?
I didn't expect, like, getting double turned always sucks, and getting that 10 and 11-inch charge off was brutal. Like, as they're coming in and like, a 40 block of Source Warriors, that normally has some staying power again, and will stay there, but yeah, getting charged by 3 Gargants and 2 Megas, yeah, funnily enough, wasn't there very long. Yeah,
for me, so Brad was playing Seraphon, he was playing friendly Seraphon, and had these big blocks of Saurus Warriors. So for me, I've played Saurus Warriors in the past. I know how brutal they can be when you start stacking things on +1 attack on the bites and all that stuff. So I had to do a real concentrated force. And I got some really lucky charges. Like we got a 10, I got an 11, and then moving into the double turn. Again, unexpected, but when it happens, it can be brutal. Because otherwise, my dick's hanging out in the wind, and Croak and friends are coming for me because I'm now in range.
Especially that Gargant you had on the right flank more, it was positioned in a much easier charge for that block you managed to then ignore with the double. Like if I managed to if I had just on the turn, if I hadn't been doubled, come in with the unit, could have hit in different spots and managed to keep you a bit more spread. Maybe I'd bring my Carnosaur in sooner. But yeah, I didn't. As what I deployed, it didn't stretch you like you.
That's the challenge, right? I've only got 4 units technically, so any way you can stretch me from the objective, especially because there were 6 objectives, that just makes my life harder. So, the first thing I had to kill was those Aether Wings, right? So
Yeah.
one Aether Wing that I killed part of the unit. That one could be enough to get around me while your Saurus is kind of wrapping. So
yeah, it's like you killed 2 of them, and I spent the CP to keep it there because I'm like, well, you have to kill it.
Yeah, because otherwise you would retreat with a high movement. It was really tough. Like, unfortunately as well, poor old Brad, his spell casting was hot garbage. Croak throughout the entire game. We played full 5 rounds. I mean, the game was kind of over by 3.
Yeah. Even the end of 2 was not amazing.
End of 2 was looking really bad, but Croak just couldn't get a spell off for his life. I think Comet's Call went off like once.
Yeah, it did only go off once.
I think he did about 7 wounds collectively, mortal wounds collectively from all that big AoE kind of blast. So
yeah.
Like it was,
and most of that was in the last round.
Yeah, it was like the time that just wasn't enough. But you got you killed the Man Crusher and then fell over and or almost took Croak with it. So
yeah, it's like watching this army just turn to wet paper and fall over.
Which is the challenge with the castle army, right? Once a castle's breached, it's really hard to fight back.
I definitely didn't form that castle properly, and with the double turn, you exploited that heavily. Hang on, double, maybe different, yeah.
Yeah, but the fact that you reduced damage also by -1, that really hurt me.
I was going into the game thinking I had a very good chance at it, but that result would not show it.
No, the high Ren worked in my favour, the flip side, the reduction of the damage, and because I've got a lot of D3s and D6s, if I roll a bad roll,
especially with
ones.
D3s, it's like, oh look, a 1's a 1, then 2, 1, and yeah.
Well, best of luck in the game.
Thank you.
Thank you for the game. It was definitely a tough one. Poor old Brad.
Thanks for the game, coach.
You'll remember Gargants. You'll be scarred for life. All right, cheers.
Catch it.
Game 3, so I'm 1-1 right now, and I'm coming up against Scott Wyatt from Queensland. Scott's running OBR, and we are playing Knife to the Heart. His OBR is Mortis Praetorian. So This one's an interesting one. Is again, you can see the list here on the screen. My concern here was going to be the Mortek Crawler, and it was going to be the Death Riders. The Death Riders have plenty of speed, while the Mortek Crawlers, while they can't auto delete my Mega Gargants, they're each failed. Or each hit is going to cause 5 damage, so that could pull down a Mega Gargant so quickly. Apologies, Scott, I don't think we took a photo together, so I've just got my crew. I've got Lockie and Pask here from my Discord that we got a pretty cool photo instead. So sorry, Scott, but sorry. So we had Knife to the Heart, which was going to be about fighting for one objective on either side, and should anyone claim it within turn 3 or 4 or 5, we would win the game if you held both objectives. So I was a little bit worried about those catapults. I was a little bit worried about those Death Riders and Xantos going to charge towards my boys, and in maybe potentially, using the five Death Riders to kind of flank around and somehow steal that back objective. So I having 4 drops, I decided to give away the first turn. I wasn't sure about if this was going to be the right call. I knew I hadn't got a command point yet, so I was at risk of him shooting his catapults at my my man crushers, and the damage that it could do, especially only having a 5-up armor save on my man crushers, would mean that it could pull down a man crusher or 2, and Battle Shock was also a threat to then lose another 1 or another 2. Should the damage go his way. So I gave it away. He kind of moved his Death Riders up forward with Xantos. His Liege Cavalos. He didn't get to charge on, but he kind of advanced forward and repositioned Catacross, and his catapult shot at, I think it was my Mega Gargant. So I was able to use my Triumph. Luckily, I got to get the reroll saves, and I was able to reduce a lot of the damage being thrown at the Man Crush. I think it was my Kraken Eater he threw it at. So in response, I played for the double turn. Again, that's why I gave away first turn, and I charged up the board, hoping that I could do a bunch of mortal wounds on the charge. And that's exactly what happened. I would charge with my Gatebreaker, my Kraken Eater, my 3 Man Crushers. To hit them pretty hard, I killed Xantos and 2 units of Death Riders in that single round of combat. I was really lucky with some of those rolls as well. So when my Man Crushers and my Kraken Eater pile in, they can attempt to stuff something in the bag, or the pants as I like to call it, and what you got to do is roll a dice for the wound characteristic, and if it's double or greater, like equal to or greater, it would mean that I stuff them in the pants. So when it comes to those Death Riders had 3 wounds apiece, which meant that on a roll of a 6, I would be able to auto-slain a Death Rider by stuffing them in the sack. And I was actually able to stuff 2 of them in the sack, so that helped me pull down those Death Riders a lot quicker than probably would have expected. I lost turn 2 priority, and OBR really threw down a whole bunch of spells and debuffs from the army. The Soul Mason threw Drain Vitality, Catacross did some things to me, and the Catapults then kind of wiped out those Man Crushers instead of the Mega Gargants. I think he tapped into the fact that those Man Crushers have a 5-up armor stave instead of the 6. So the Man Crushers were basically gone, and in my turn, I then had to go into Catacross because Catacross was blocking the catapult. So I had to go in and try to, once I got within 6 inches of the catapult, it wouldn't be able to shoot. And on the other side of the board, I had a Gatebreaker charging up the flank towards his objective. So I hope that the Gatebreaker on its charge and its damage would be able to do enough damage to the Mortek Guard to kill those screens. His units they're only screens of 10, so I'd have to probably hit a couple of waves to get rid of the screens and claim the objective. But I knew, having only 10 man bodies, that if I could delete 11, let's say there was all 3 units of 10 within that 6 inches, if I could delete 11 of the Mortek Guard, and knowing he didn't have a the Harvester, the Gothazar Harvester, it would mean that eventually I felt confident that I would be able to grab that objective. And that's exactly what happened. I charged, I did some mortal wounds on the charge with the Gatebreaker, I swung for the fences, I think I used the CP to reroll hit rolls of 1. I killed that unit of 10 Mortek Guard, and with the pile-in, there was enough space for me to sneak and get myself about, let's say, half an inch or a quarter of an inch onto the objective. And what that meant was when I won priority in turn 3, the game became over. Even if I had lost priority, he didn't have anyone that could go and steal my objective. And I think it was only a matter of time that I would steal that objective. So that was a real tough one for Scott. I think, just again, the speed and the fact that, he didn't have enough bodies, as opposed to, I did face another OBR list very similar. Having a big block of 30 Mortek Guard would have made my life a whole lot harder when trying to claim that objective. So let's hear what Scott had to say about that one.
G'day guys, we're at VicGT again, and this is round 3. I got to play Scott from Queensland, running his Ossiarch Bone Reapers, double catapult. Boy oh boy, was I shitting my pants. Scott,
you weren't the only one, mate.
How'd it go, man? Like, what's your side of the story?
Well, it's knife to the heart. So when you see giants on the other side, you know it's a rough game, especially for Ossiarch, because we've got a bit, a lot of resilience, but the giants have just got the range to get through, and so the only option I felt I had was to just attack. Unfortunately, your comeback after that attack was enough to just take out most of my offensive force, and so there wasn't a lot after that. Catapults performed perfectly, exactly as I wanted them to.
Catapults were pulling down Man Crusher every round, maybe even 2.
Yeah.
So I was getting really scared. I quickly found myself without any of the Man Crushers, so it was down to 3. And then you charged Special K Catacross into 2 of them.
Oh, so I'm gonna get some bullying for that. The one thing I was told when coming into this tournament was do not charge Special K, and of course I still charge Special K.
And look, you tied up my, and I think you probably had to, right? Because my Gargants, my Mega Gargants and my Man Crushers until they died, we took down your Death Riders, took down Xantos. They were coming for those catapults, and then all you had left was the 3 units of 10 Mortek Guard and the dude in the wheelchair.
Yeah, so the only play I had at that point was to charge the 2 Gargants with Catacross. He severely wounded your Kraken Eater, and so what I needed him to do was live, finish off the Kraken Eater, and then if I got the turn, with turn 3, he would have just retreated out, used the extra 3 and ran to grab your objective and win the game. That was the only play I had, so as soon as Catacross finally bit the dust at the end of your turn 2, nothing else.
The Death Riders probably were the biggest blow to your force. Like the minute you lost those Death Riders, I felt that you could retain your objective, but it was going to be a real tough time to get mine.
Yes.
That was my thoughts anyway.
No, yeah, you were absolutely right. Like I said, everything in my defensive force was doing its job.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as soon as I just don't have enough of an out-hitting side.
And you don't have the summoning, you don't have, outside of those, you don't have the speed. So you were relying on pulling those megas down through the catapults, through some of your spells. You were doing some good chip damage and big damage.
That's exactly what the play was. Baby Xantos, the Leech Cavalier, so he did pretty spectacularly.
He did 12 wounds to the Kraken Eater.
Yeah.
So little old Xantos and his horse. Woo!
Yeah.
Woo! When did horses get all that rend?
That horse caught you off guard, didn't
That
it?
horse with the rend, it's hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s or 3s, rend. Where did this horse come from?
I don't know what to tell you. But you got the win. And
no, look, it was a good game, and it was one of those ones on the knife edge, knife to the heart, literally on the knife edge. It was those catapults were going to bring down a Mega Gargant and just quickly, or my speed was going to be enough to just press your line, and it just happened to work in my favour.
Yeah. So you winning that priority role really, really got you the game. You pretty much had the game anyway. But I was hoping to
I think the catapults probably needed to do a little bit more damage.
Yeah, I mean they did what I expected from them because they are very swingy. So like in my next list, I'm thinking of adding Xantos in so that they can reroll their wounds.
Yeah.
Which would be.
So that's the challenge, right? Like, you know, like if you hit, it's 5 damage. It's wound. If it doesn't hit, then like it's like it's rocks or diamonds.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Scott, this was awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you, and good luck for the next round.
Yeah.
So day one ended, and I was 1 loss, 2 wins, and I was up against a rival. Not a personal rival, but my games club has a rivalry with the Beasts of Belko Games Club, and Representative Elliot Stenson was my opponent, one of the Beast of Belko, and you can see how wild he looks in this photo. But no, Elliot's awesome. He's got a wonderfully painted army, probably one of the best army painted I saw at the tournament. So it was an absolute pleasure to play his Andyjp, even though I wasn't looking forward to playing Andyjp. He was playing a little bit lighter Deepkin. He was playing Ironrock, and he was taking advantage of the Broken Realms Morathi battalion. So it meant that his general, the Archelian King, which would actually be able to shrug more wounds and mortal wounds off to his guard, which were the 2 units of 2 sharks on a 2+. So those sharks have 8 wounds apiece. So being able to protect his general is going to be tasty. And he was really playing for turn 3, where he'd have a whole bunch of additional command points up his sleeve and could spend multiple command points on a single unit to be able to get plus 1,000,000 attacks. You know, he could really command point stack during the turn 3. So I knew what Elliot was trying to do. He wanted to protect that general. He wanted to hit turn 3. He had the eels. He had the defensive eels, the Ishalan Guard, which were going to be a nightmare for my boys because they ignore rend. I think they're, in the first turn, I think they were on a 2+ armor save in partnership with the turtle, which made my all of my rend attacks, my low volume, high rend attacks, were going to be challenging. And I knew that my mortal wounds on the charge were not going to be enough to be able to take down these eels that were going to protect ultimately the rest of his force, and then set up for that turn 3 charge where everything's going to get like a whole bunch of additional attacks, and they always fight first. So I gave away first turn, knowing that I couldn't do much even if I wanted to go first. I knew throwing the rocks were going to be useless. I knew I couldn't hit the charge. So I needed to take everything I possibly could. So I gave it away. Elliot threw down a bunch of his abilities, including some of his abilities which were once per game abilities. And my Gatebreaker got a -1 to his movement. There was a big piece of deadly terrain in the center of the board, and funnily enough, when Elliot finished his move, his turtle took 3 mortal wounds from the deadly terrain, and then his eels, one of his units of eels, took down 2 mortal wounds. So in response, I tried to set up a charge. I threw some rocks, but they all deflected. Again, a 2+ armor save, just did nothing, ignoring rend. My man crushers with their high volume attacks, I had to get them into the eels with the clubs, because each of those man crushers would have 10 attacks. So I thought, if I was going to take down these eels, it would have to be in a combination of the mortal wounds on the charge and the high volume damage 1, but having 10 attacks, so 30 attacks from those man crushers would get through the eels. But again, the 2+ unrendable save, throwing down a command point to reroll 1s, or even a mystic shield would just make my life difficult. And then the Gatebreaker would go in and try to take down the eels. But again, they didn't really do a lot. Turn 2 came around, and I had lost priority, so I didn't really need it, but I also didn't like losing it. What it did is allowed Elliot to start repositioning some of his army and start to flank with the thralls, position those sharks for a perfect turn 3, and funnily enough, again, the deadly terrain did another 2 mortal wounds to the turtle, so that was 5 mortal wounds to the turtle, which was like 33% of the wounds, I think it is. So, we just fought in the table. There's a lot of back and forth. I think I did end up taking down the eels. Funnily enough, the sharks then went into combat, and I was able to kill one of the, because there was 2 units of 2 sharks, right? So I killed one shark, and because he was setting up for a turn 3, he didn't want to spend a command point for Inspiring Presence. So he decided to roll for it. And he rolled a 6, which normally wouldn't be so bad. But my Mega Gargant, which was in combat with it, causes a -1 bravery. And then in addition, we were sitting on Sinister Terrain, which was another -1 bravery. So actually that shark battle shocked off the table, which didn't go well. And obviously very, very unlucky for Elliot. I won priority going into turn 3, so he was still going to fight first. I couldn't do a lot, and he burnt like 4 or 5 CPs to get that stack with whatever he had left on the table. My Kraken Eater was kicking the objective around the table. We pressed forward. We were able to kind of take down a whole bunch of his units. Luckily for me, when he did end up getting that CP stack for turn 3, majority of those threats were gone. All the eels were gone, the turtle was gone, the sharks were gone or about to go, and it was just a bunch of small little troops and the Archelian King that were trying to keep the objectives, and the unit of thralls. The thralls were probably too far out of the game for too long to make a difference, and again, I probably had too many victory points in this scenario to make it winnable. So by turn 4, turn 5, it was just a whole bunch of attrition, a whole bunch of chasing down little heroes and fighting, but ultimately I picked up the win on that one. So that's my side of the story. Elliot.
Alright, g'day guys. This is round 4, and I'm here with the Beast of Belko himself, Elliot. How do you think our game went? So we played, what did we play again?
Total Conquest?
Total Conquest, and you were playing your IDK.
Yeah.
How do you think the game went?
I think I gave a good fight and then got dumpstered.
How? Like, tell me, like, where did it go wrong? I keep talking about, I assume I'm going to talk about already, the deadly terrain.
Yeah,
it did 5 mortal wounds to the turtle, which is such a linchpin.
And 2 to the eels.
Yeah, like I don't think it's that bad. I think it's a turtle, like chipping it down was then reducing the cover and stuff. But like from your side, what went well, what didn't go well?
So against your list coach, I had a look and I was pretty sure that nothing I had would live in combat against any of your Mega Gargants for a turn, except for the unrenderable Ishlian eels.
Yeah.
And that's what happens, much to your frustration.
Those defensive eels. Oh my gosh.
With the turtle near them, it helps.
I throw megas into them, I threw man crushers.
Yep.
I did some pretty crappy mortal wounds on the charge.
Yep.
And then it's just like 2 up, 2 up, 2 up, 2 up.
Yep.
Luckily for me, you forgot to use the 1 CP to reroll once.
That would have made a difference. That would make them even more obnoxious. And I was only bringing 6 of them. If I'd had 12 of them, you might not have been able to beat me. It would be pretty pros.
2 units of 6, or would you have done?
Yeah, I like 2 or 6. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, 3 is enough to be annoying, but it's not
3's great
undefeatable.
3's great against shooting because you can just put 3 and then that's why you lose. But only 12 wounds means a couple mortals is going to really add up. It was really hard to space both units of the eels far enough away so they didn't both get mortal wounded on the way in, while also trying to keep them within range of the turtles buff. And it's just like juggling all your aura buffs as an Idoneth player can be tricky, and I'm not very good at it yet, but it's something to work on.
I think kudos as well is you were playing the battalion from White Dwarf, so you didn't go through... Broken Realms. Why did I say White Dwarf? You didn't do Futhan, you didn't do Domhain, you were running Iron Rack. So, I know there were some limitations as well. Your general becomes a named character, so there's some limitations, but... you brought Reavers, so credit to you to bring Reavers and bring something that's not just eels and turtles.
I would have loved to chop a Mega Gargant with the Thralls, and I almost got it. You were real worried about my Thralls all game.
You killed the Man Crusher. You killed the Man Crusher with your Thrall. You did what? Overkill by like almost
30
20
wounds, something. Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, some serious overkill.
They're super squishy, but if you get lucky and you get them in, they're amazing, and people often don't look at them as if they're a threat.
When you hit like the wound 1 or wound 4 or greater, like they just become amazing. But then like when you go like Stormcast with wound 2, you're just like
not so great. Yeah, not so great. And the 32-inch bases and 1-inch range attack means I find the best thing there for killing is actually monsters, because you can wrap around the bases.
Yeah.
But if you try and fight like a big unit of Fire Slayers or Stormcast, you're just fucked.
Becomes tough.
Yeah.
Anything you'd have done differently next time?
not worry so much about your D6 mortal wounds on the way in, and just go unrenderable to rerolling shield save heals. And what I was planning on doing was losing the turn 2 priority roll to you and just having you stuck fighting the wrong thing, so that then I could double end of 2 into 3 and then
fight
really
first.
hit you.
Yeah, fight first. And
I didn't expect to kill a Mega Gargant so early in the game, but when I saw that it was just taking damage from my shooting, I was like, alright, I'll commit to it. I'll give it -2 to hit, and then I'll hit it with everything I've got. And I actually got it, which was awesome. And I about half helped the other one with the king, which was cool.
yeah, that was brutal. And then also you lost a shark to battle shock. You rolled a 6, unfortunately. My Mega Gargant
sucks.
causing terror,
Shark
and
to
then
battle
being
shock.
on Sinister, so that was brutal.
And +2 bravery, so it was only the 6 that would have made me flee, and I rolled it. But with that CP I saved, I did manage to get onto an objective.
Yeah, there was one eel that broke free,
Ran away.
retreated,
That eel was the
or
bane of your existence for so long.
just chasing this one friggin' eel that's ignoring Ren. It's
Kept
like,
living. I think he lived for 2 turns against a gatebreaker who had +1 to hit, which is like insane. I was really lucky with my after saves too. And you broke a boat though.
I did break a boat.
broke a boat.
Finally broke a
Hell
boat.
yeah.
It's been one of my goals.
Take it off.
Everyone who has faction terrain, I hate you. I'm coming for you. OBR, I've destroyed like 7 or 10 of them already.
Beat 'em up.
I'm waiting for Sylvaneth. I just want to like go in
break
and like
some
just
woods.
break all the
Be
trees.
sick.
Elliot, this has been awesome. Bisa Belko and My Games Club have a massive rivalry, so we were going to see each other again. And you were kind enough to give me a dice. So
Hell yeah. It only works on a good game.
well, I rolled a 6, but like
I need that dice. I really do. Actually, I won turn to priority, which was fucking huge. I killed a Mega Gargant. I lost all the others.
you
but
killed a Mega
I can't
Gargant
complain.
and 3 man crushes, which is
man
more
crushes.
than anyone has done so far at this tournament. So, despite running a less than optimal Deepkin, because you're not going those 2 big
Yes.
clans, what are they called? Temples? No.
2 big enclaves.
Enclaves.
I'm still running Sharks. So
But yeah, he's
go
also running
fuck
Sharks.
them. Yep.
But your Sharks, man, like, I know we're trying to wrap up here, but even though I stopped the pile in, I've still got 3 inches, so
Yeah.
it's not as big of a deal against me.
Yep.
All right, let's wrap this up.
Game.
Thanks again. Good luck.
Finally was game 5, and I was really happy with where I was at the moment. I was 1 loss, 3 wins. I was really going in for, if I could win more than I lost, that is always a great tournament. If I can have 5 good games with 5 opponents, especially 5 opponents that I've never played before, that's always a goal of mine. I wasn't bringing Suns to go 5-0, so I got Arthur from the Model Citizens down in Melbourne, so I haven't played Arthur before. Really awesome dude. I had such a great time with Arthur, and it was interesting because it was a little bit of a repeat for game 3. You know, it had the double catapult. It had some Mortek Guard, but he changed his list a little bit. I think this was definitely the stronger or more competitive build, having the big block of 40 Mortek Guard supported by the Gothazar Harvester. Not taking Special K, but instead having a Xantos with a Liege Cavalos, in addition to those crawlers. So he wasn't getting as consistent attacks from the crawlers, but he was going to get a whole bunch more out of his Mortek Guard, especially that block of 40, which kind of caught me off by surprise, which I'll share with you in a minute. So it was going to come down to how quickly I could take down the Harvester, because the Harvester, was it on a 4+, you get to bring back a Mortek Guard after it dies. So I had to take down the Harvester, or I had to completely destroy that 40 Mortek Guard. And look, me throwing rocks at the Harvester was going to be a tough challenge. It was going to be tough. So I gave away first turn in a very similar time to round 3, which was again the double catapults. And funnily enough, again, the triumph that I got was reroll saves. So it seemed like I got a little bit of a blessing when it came to the saves. So he moved forward. Arthur moved his force forward. I accepted I was going to get shot with catapults. Arthur threw down a debuff to my Gatebreaker General, which meant that he could only charge using 1 d6 as opposed to 2, which would then mean that in my turn I would fail the charge with the Gatebreaker, and I'd kick the objective 4 inches, which wasn't enough to change the points value in the battle plan. And so it meant that my Kraken Eater wasn't advancing along with the rest of the force. I had to kick it one more time to get it over the line to change the value from worth 4 points for my opponent only down to 2. So real risk mitigation here. I went in and I charged the 3 Man Crushers with re-rolling ones to hit, and I killed a heap of Mortek Guard, and I think it was only like 10 or 14 left. However, Arthur had put down so many buffs and so many supports on those Mortek Guard. They returned serve, and they did 38 damage to my Man Crushers, which was brutal. They killed a whole unit of Man Crushers in one single swoop with only like 10 to 14 Mortek Guard. I couldn't believe it. I'd never seen Mortek Guard hit as hard as they did in this game. And coming into turn 2, I lost the priority, and Arthur would attempt to shore up his back objectives and reposition his flank, really made sure that his back objective was going to be protected, and then kind of manipulated. He had some Mortek Guard on the flank trying to go for the 2-point objective, and again, throw down the catapults into my Mega Gargants, which did some serious damage to my general, but not enough to pull it down. I would respond by going up and clearing up Mortek Guard, scoring up points. I'd lose priority into turn 3, so again the catapults would just shoot and would actually pull down my Gatebreaker, my general Gatebreaker. So I was down to 2 models on the table. I had my Kraken Eater, I had my non-general Gatebreaker, now that my Man Crusher and my general was gone. So I had a pretty good lead at this particular point, but the question was, could I hold enough points knowing that I only had 2 models? And if those catapults would then pull down another Mega Gargant, it probably would be stolen from me in round 4 or round 5. So I tried to do some damage. I tried to take out those big key threats. I knew that the catapults, even if they killed the Mega Gargants, wouldn't have the speed to then go get the objectives back. So I just tried to take down the Gothazar Harvester, try to take down the support heroes. I think there was a Liege Kavalos still around, or Xantos. And I tried to take down those 10 Mortek Guard that were protecting the catapult. So really kind of reducing the amount of bodies and the threats to the objective. Turn 4, I won the priority roll, and it was at that point the damage was done. There wasn't enough bodies on the table, and with me still having 2 Megas wounded but still around, again, as I mentioned, the catapults would pull them down, but the lead was too great. So we kind of played it through till turn 5, and I would win the game. So Arthur, what were your thoughts?
G'day guys, so just finished round 5, tournament's over, Vic GT, and I'm here with my opponent Arthur. We ran OBR, we've kind of gone through the list already. I'm going to throw it to Arthur. How did you find our games? We played Battle for the Pass?
Battle for the Pass, yeah. So Gargant's probably their best matchup, maybe I'd say, or Battle Plan possibly. So when I saw the matchup, I was a bit worried. I was actually very worried because my list has a horrible run-in with Gargants. I've got one big block of 40 Mortek, and that's really my only staying power. The 2 10s aren't going to do much, so I'm always going to be behind on objectives. And then I've got the Crawlers, which need to do more than they should do to really win the matchup.
I think the challenge, so this is the first time I've actually played Battle for the Pass, and that's where I can actually kick the objective and change the points value. So the first turn I didn't get the roll that I wanted. The second turn I ended up getting it over the line, and I think for me the massive risk mitigation of not having the 4 being scored against me allowed me to be a bit more free-flowing.
Yeah, definitely.
But then in turn the catapults, your catapults can just do massive damage if the swing is successful.
Yes. They've one-shot a Gargant before, or done 30 wounds to it, but in this game, I think the most they did was 10, I think, in an attack.
Yeah, 10 or 15. I think it was at 15, 1 point.
Which isn't enough, really. When 2 of them are firing, it's 400 points to do 15 wounds, and you're still capping with 20, and you don't degrade, so yeah, the Mortek got ground out. There was a nice little epic moment where 3 Man Crushers got smashed by some Mortek cards.
I'll be honest, I've played OBR many times now, and Arthur's OBR is probably the hardest hitting one I've ever faced. You played a really good strategy. Most people don't use the Bone-Tithe Nexus to do the charge on a sick, reduce the charge by only, as D6. Usually it's like a -1 to hit or -1 to cast, so that was really good. The big block of Vortec, I've never had it punch as hard as it's punched me, and I was surprised to lose 3 Man Crushes to 38 damage in one round of combat, and it wasn't even the full unit.
No.
So
I think it was 15 or 15. I think attack.
Yeah, it's 15. It was.
It's a sneaky little combo with Mortis Praetorians, re-rolling all hits, and then re-rolling wounds of 1. 5s and 6s explode, so you can fish for the 5s and 6s. Give them +1 attack. You can give them +1 to hit. So eventually, you're ending up with sometimes a third more wound rolls than you had original hit rolls.
Yeah, because you would re-roll your successful hits, going for more of those 5s and 6s, and you might drop a couple, but you would get far. And there was times where you would almost re-roll and get half extra 5s and 6s. So it's just like that payoff was so good for you.
Yeah.
So I was super impressed. It was just like, what? Like, I think the first turn or the second turn, I was dumbfounded. I'm like, what?
Yeah, that unit it's very resilient with the Harvester. So it's kind of the tanky unit, and it needs to be in a matchup with Gargants. When you're throwing out Ren 3, Ren 2, Shield Wall doesn't do anything. So it all comes down to the Harvester keeping things alive.
Yeah, what worked was getting +1 to hit against those Mortec guard, especially. That was the big thing. I needed to chew at those Mortec, getting +1 to hit. I didn't get as many buffs onto the characters and things like that, but being able to just reduce the block of 40, the block of 10, the block of 10, then, it was you had to kill me to score, and it became really hard.
Yeah, very close in the end, but no.
Oh, it was super close. Like, it was super close, and turn 4, I think I finally got my first priority win, and that kind of sealed the deal. But until then, the pendulum was just swinging. But
it was a good game. Yeah.
Anything else you'd add to that?
I think for just on the point of why I was using the D6 charge ability, it's because you were at 2s to hit. So the -1 to hit, making it go to 3s wasn't that big of a deal at the end of the day, especially when you had the volume of attacks that you had with the option to use command ability to reroll 1s to hit. If I was making you go from 4s to 5s, if you were in something like Take a Tribe, then that would be the choice. But in this scenario, I thought actually stopping you from getting into combat originally and limiting what you can do, even with a 3-inch charge, you've got a 33% chance to fail. So,
and that's what happened with the first attack. We had the 3 Man Crushers go into the big block of Mortec. Then my Gatebreaker was, I think, 4 inches maybe, or 5 inches.
Yes, 5 inches, I believe.
And I rolled that 1d6. Normally 2d6 would get me in on 5, but I rolled a 2 or a 3. And it was also not worth the command point. Like, command point for, like...
Yeah. I think you had a 33% chance to actually make it, so it's a big risk. And then, you might not have a command point throughout the whole double.
No, it was great. It was really good, and it made things a lot harder. But Arthur, thank you very much. Good luck for the rest of the... Well, not for the rest of the tournament. It's already over.
It's done.
But thanks, mate. It was a good game. I really enjoyed it, and you were killing. All right, thanks, guys. So how did it all end for me? So I ended on 4 wins and 1 loss, which was pretty awesome. Again, we're talking about the Sons of Behemat. So again, a lot of people have talked about how competitive they are in the meta. I did get to play some very interesting armies. They didn't get quite to match up to Lockie's, Seraphon. I didn't get to play Corey or Michael's Daughters of Cain. This was the old Daughters of Cain, the Calibron teleport shenanigans fight in the hero phase. So this was the old book, not new book Daughters. So it'd be interesting to see how their lists have changed. But I think ultimately, I was really happy to see Destruction really play strong in the meta. And I think partially what really plays to our strengths is we're simple, we're fast, we're playing to the objectives. And I think some of these armies like Seraphon, Daughters of Cain, they're relying on certain things that other armies can't match. So Destruction, like your Big Warg, your Iron Jaws, your Ogre Mawtribes, which was around, your Stonehorns and Thunder Tusks. And even my army probably played to the strength of the meta. But I ended on 8th, and that was really important. And funnily enough, happened just days before my Warhammer community article. So I was talking to the Warhammer community team. That article was submitted weeks before the tournament. But it was funny that I didn't go 1 and 4, because imagine how valid that article would have been if I was talking about the competitiveness of Gargants
yet I only go 1 and 4. But what for me, 4 and 1. I really like this list. I really like the build. The 4 drops really works for me. It gives me a real chance to determine who goes first, and it played to my strength. Where previously, when I had my 6 drop Gargants, I did have some screens. I did have some more versatility, but it did mean that often the top tier armies or the higher tier armies that were using battalions would make me go first, and I don't want to go first most of the time because I want to increase the likelihood of charging. So the fact that I got the Triumph as well, that worked really well in my favor. I did get to reroll hits, I did get to reroll wounds, and the reroll saves were just brilliant for me. So this worked really well. I will probably take this to a few more tournaments. I think it's coming down to play style now and just learning the meta and learning how to respond with, again, only 6 models on the table. But that's probably the battle report from here, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. This is something that I haven't really done before, but a lot of people have asked me to talk about my games and talk about some of the experiences. And again, shout out to the Measured Gaming crew who put on an awesome event. I really enjoyed Vic GT. It was great to see so many people out in force. It was great to see so many different armies, very mixed meta. And it was awesome to see Destruction as well go really well. But that's it, guys. I hope you found that discussion valuable. If you did, give the video the old thumbs up. And if you have a comment or an insight, leave it in the comment section below. The champions over here are my AOS Coach Patreons and YouTube members. So you guys are bloody legends. Thank you for all the support. If you want to know more about the support programs, the links are below down here in the episode description, along with a link to the Discord server, so we can continue this conversation. Until next time, don't forget to name your characters and have a good one.